What is Katakanization, or Katakanization? You likely see loanwords in Japanese all the time, but do you ever wonder how exactly these are converted from one language to another? Like, how does the word thermal become this? Where does the TH go, and where does the S come from? And why are these words harder to pronounce for many learners when it might be a word from their very own language? Katakanization explains all of this. The term is allegedly created by Tomoyuki Akiyama from Tofugu, basically summing up the process of moving loanwords from their original form to a Japanese compatible form. Before I actually talk about the rules and concepts, why is Katakanization necessary? If you look very closely, you will realize Japanese is missing some pretty important things for pronouncing many foreign words. This problem is fixed by making the foreign words sound less foreign. Along with that, the word isn't only made easily pronounceable, but readable too. Pronounceability and readability may seem pretty simple, but are extremely important. Also, recognizable pronounceability leads to better comprehension, as well as an easier time writing. Katakanization effectively covers the four most important pillars of language. That being said, how do you apply this extremely important concept? First, like most problems, you have to actually identify the problems. What I mean by this is there are some obvious parts of many words that are just not compatible with Japanese. One of the most obvious being Japanese words don't really end in consonants, and Japanese also doesn't have double consonants and certain other sounds. We'll get to the solutions for those in a minute, but first we'll start with Rule 1. Rule 1 states, when a consonant is not immediately followed by a vowel, you add a vowel. I think that's pretty simple. Assuming you know katakana, you would know any other way would not be possible. You can't exactly cut half the character off. So, as said, you just add a vowel. But how do you choose what vowel to add? Well, it's a mix of spelling and the pronunciation in the native language. For instance, an example that Tofugu uses is size. Converting this straight into katakana would result in shize, which sounds remotely similar to size, but not anywhere near close enough to be understandable. So instead, you go about it phonetically. Size becomes saizu. The u goes at the end here because that is the default kana to use for most consonants. There are certain consonants that pair with vowels and kind of soften the ending to make it sound a little bit more like a single consonant, compared to a consonant and a vowel combination. If you look here at the chart, you will see O comes after T or D. I don't know the reason why these combinations work, but they really do. I'm sure there's some psychology or something at hand here. So, if you want to take a word like start, it would end with O because O comes after T. Match or machi ends in I because E pairs with a CH. Rule 2. Replace illegitimate sounds with similar legitimate Japanese sounds. This rule is kind of self-explanatory. There are some obvious illegitimate sounds in many English words, or also non-English words. Not illegitimate as far as words go, but as far as Japanese goes. Here is another chart. English apparently has 3 A sounds, which is news to me. That aside, all of these A sounds are turned into one A. Apple becomes apuru, umbrella becomes anburera, account becomes accounto. Due to the A sounds being combined, words like hato and hato are made, meaning hut and hat. However, the sound turns into the same one, so there isn't really any difference. Dr. Seuss would probably make something cool with that though. Mini rule, extended sounds must have an extension. A word like start that I used before, there is kind of a gap between the A and T. At least it feels like it. So that is represented in the word as the line. This is important to note because a word like pull and pool might be the same without this extension. However, with the extension, you have puru and puru. That's not all though. You might have noticed that was only the vowels. And well, words aren't made up of only vowels. Sounds like TH becomes S, V becomes a B, L becomes an R, and so on. Again, another thing I never noticed with English, but it is really important here. And that is that there's actually 2 different sounds with TH. At the end of mouth, the TH is kind of soft, but at the beginning of there, it is kind of buzzy, or a Z sound, as they put in the chart on Tofugu. It's really subtle, but I can kind of notice it when I really think about it. Due to this, the softer TH gets an S, and the sharper or buzzier TH gets a Z. So make sure to pay attention to that. Also, there's another A sound, sort of. In words like cat and gap, this A that's pronounced like a will get a small ya, making words like kyato and gyapu instead of kato and gapu. Rasto ruru, ruru siri. Duplicate the stop consonant at the end of the word if it occurs after a short vowel. If you say certain words like dip, you might notice that there is a pause or a stop. Replicating this is important because it can really change how a word sounds, even though it might not seem like much. This stop or pause is added with the small tsu character. and it goes right before the pause to enunciate the consonant. You can see this clearly when it's written in Romaji. It literally doubles the consonant, causing that pause. It mostly goes on the last syllable though. A word like picnic, even though the pick part does have that pause, it doesn't get through to the actual writing. Exceptions. Some older words will be exceptions to these rules. There's really nothing more to say about these, you just have to learn them unfortunately. A lot of them are common though, so you probably already know a lot of them. So I don't think the exceptions are really that big of a deal. That's it for the actual language parts, however, I found some other stuff I wanted to talk about when researching this video. While researching, I saw a lot of sentiment about loanwords ruining the Japanese language. Originally, I was just going to talk about the actual process of Katakanization and how it's done. Everything that I talked about earlier, basically. However, seeing all of these articles and the lawsuit for using too many loanwords, I actually started to think, how many loanwords is too much? On one end, loanwords are kind of natural for nouns and brand new concepts. For instance, using the word hamburger in Japanese instead of a brand new Japanese word makes sense. It's basically conveying a brand new concept. Making up a new word in English for sushi would just be weird, so this goes for all languages. The point I'm trying to make here is it's definitely not a bad thing to borrow a word from another language, especially if the concept is special to that culture. Then, on the opposite end, you have the sentiment at the center of the lawsuit. Replacing common, everyday Japanese words with English ones when it isn't really necessary. Words like system and risk replaced actual native words. That was all in 2023 though, 12 long years ago. So, have loanwords continued to corrupt the Japanese language since then? Well, cop-out answer here, it's a matter of perspective. Really though. A younger person would probably not even notice a drastic change in language. However, someone like the old man in the lawsuit might find it hard to listen to. If I'm 80 years old and listening to a mainstream news network, I would like it to be easily understandable, especially as a person who's been listening to news for over 60 years. I would hate to sit there with a dictionary wondering what half the words mean with poor eyesight and shaky hands. No offense to the old people, that did feel a little harsh. You get the point though, I think, and this comment about the lawsuit sums it up pretty well. You can't stop language from evolving, but at least slow it down so it doesn't become unintelligible in less than one generation. I don't know if I completely agree with the unintelligible part, but maybe that's just because I speak English. Back to the lawsuit though, it ended up getting smacked down. I blame this entirely on the old man trying to get 1 million yen instead of doing this out of principle. As this guy says, it probably would have gone a lot further if he didn't try to sue for emotional damages. Refusing to pay for a broadcast that is now unintelligible to you seems like a lot more reasonable of a thing to do, and maybe could have actually gotten something done. Final thoughts though, I don't think Japanese will transform into English, at least not in the next couple hundred years. It should be safe, I hope. I saw a lot of people saying kanji will be gone and that it can't keep up. Maybe my imagination is poor, but I literally cannot imagine the language without kanji. I think spaces or something would have to be incorporated at that point. Or maybe it can just alternate between hiragana and katakana. I don't like that though. I don't like that at all. Or maybe, even worse, some accents could be added to make some sort of pinyin type thing. Anyways, I'm sorry for introducing those horrific ideas. If this does happen down the road, I will not be taking credit for coming up with the idea. Anyways, that is all for the video. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Oh, and at the beginning of the video when I said Tofugu allegedly made this word, I say that because their article is from 2022 and there is another website not related to Tofugu as far as I could tell. And that website uses the word a whole 5 years prior. It could be the same author though and he just moved websites, I don't really know. Either way though, go check out the Tofugu article if you thought the concept was interesting, because they have it all nice and neatly organized and in more detail, and many of the examples were from the article, so thanks Tofugu. Anyways, again, thank you for watching, bye bye, like, subscribe.